Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission, December the 9th, I believe. Are we on board?
Yeah.
All right. I'll say that again. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the December 9th meeting of the Comox Valley Sewage Commission. I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land, and welcome all those directors present today and staff, both in the chambers and online. Our first item of business is the resolution status report dated December 25th. Motion for receipt, please. Moved by Morin, seconded by Kerr. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. And we'll move into reports. The Sewage Management Advisory Committee minutes of November 27th. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Morin, seconded by Swift. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Receipt is carried. And item number 2, the Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project, water supply to Courtney Pump Station. And we have a report dated November 28th. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to the Commission. Charlie Gore is our Senior Manager of Capital Projects Delivery, and Charlie will be introducing this fairly brief report for the Commission's consideration. Charlie, over to you.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Chair. I just have a really brief one for you today. Hopefully this is an easy one. We are looking, as we move through the construction of the Courtney Pump Station, we reached out to our colleagues at the City of Courtney asking for a new water service to supply the water supply for all the wash down and the process at the new Courtney Pump Station. Unfortunately, they responded that it's outside the purview of the bylaw. And so you can see here a snippet of bylaw 1700, which defines the properties outside of the City of Courtney's municipal boundaries that are allowed to get water from the city. And I have added the new Courtney Pump Station on there, circled in red, as you can see up on the screen. It is not currently in that bylaw. So we have been working with the staff. They've indicated that they support this request. They just need to move through the official protocols of getting a request from the Sewage Commission from this bylaw change. And so that's what we're looking for, recommendation from the Commission today to allow us to write on your behalf to City of Courtney Council to have this bylaw amended so that we can get the necessary water supply to our new Courtney Pump Station. Happy to answer any questions or concerns.
Thanks very much, Charlie. Any questions or comments from Commission members? There appear to be none, or would appear to reinforce the routine nature of this. Anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried, and recommendation moved by Grant, seconded by Kerr. And I should have acknowledged that we have Director Morin here as an alternate for Director McCollum today. Welcome belatedly, Director Morin. Thanks for your contributions. Any discussion on the recommendation? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. And we'll move on to item number 3, the Asset Management Program, Comox Valley Sewage Service, a report dated December 5th. A motion for receipt, please. Moved by Grant, seconded by Swift, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And Commission members, you'll be familiar with this topic. We've been at the board table a couple of times. We were at the Recreation Commission, I think a week ago, and at the Electoral Area Services Committee yesterday. And here we are today at the Sewage Commission, and we'll be coming back to the Water Committee in about an hour's time. Yeah, and Chris LaRose is our Senior Manager of Water Wastewater Services. Chris will have some introductory comments and then talk really specifically about some of the Sewage Commission assets and some examples around asset management. We understand the board's interest in coming back to you with some options around implementing an asset management program. We will be doing that in January. But we also felt it important to present this more detailed perspective at the individual committee and commission meetings. We also understand there's some interest around really understanding the nature of the program that's being presented and whether it's the most appropriate program for an organization our size and for the services that we deliver. So we're taking all of that information, we're giving it good consideration. We'll be coming back to you in January, like I said, with some options around the program itself. And that will be in an introductory fashion to the financial planning process that you will be beginning towards the end of January and into February. So without further ado, Chris will be we're walking through a couple of slides here in the PowerPoint, and then we're there to support a discussion to follow. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you, James, and through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start today's presentation with an apology for not better supporting the asset management governance process this year with service-specific context. So that's what I'm here to do today. I've been a champion of the CVRD asset management program since 2018, when I started to grasp the scale of the asset replacement program that will be required to deliver for this service and for our other water and wastewater services over the next 15 to 20 years. When I heard about the concerns that were expressed at the October 21st and then the November board meetings, I realized that we've been deficient in communicating why asset management is critical in that specific context of this service and the others. As you've seen from the numbers presented in those prior reports, the services that we manage together at this commission and the committee make up a significant fraction of the CVRD assets and are largely driving the need for that corporate asset management program. So with the Comox Valley Sewage Service only having been established about approximately 45 years ago, we've never been through an asset replacement cycle. And as we get into our first cycle of asset renewal, we need to evolve our processes to rise to that challenge. So we're aware that we're entering a time of greater fiscal conservatism, and while increasing full-time equivalent positions and consulting dollars is likely counterintuitive, my objective with this presentation today is to show you that fiscal responsibility is exactly what's driving us to develop this asset management program to help reduce the costs and risks to this service as we navigate this period in time. Because small decisions about how we manage and especially how we replace that huge body of assets that deliver our essential wastewater services will have a big impact on the cost to the service participants. I also get the feeling that partially because of our deficiency in better supporting that policy and strategy approval process with specific context, some of you may be thinking that asset management is has become a bit of a catchphrase, and that we're just bringing this program forward because it's the right thing to do. It's what other jurisdictions are doing. And while it's true that asset management is becoming best practice for local governments in British Columbia, it's not because it's trendy, it's because it offers a systematic, measurable, repeatable, proven system for navigating and optimizing the highly complex challenges that come along with managing a very large portfolio of public infrastructure. And as I'll show you today, it also holds the promise of a significant return on investment in the proposed investment in terms of resources for this program. So what we refer to as asset management is a sophisticated management system that has evolved internationally, and while some small differences exist between the approaches recommended by Asset Management BC or NAMS or others, the approach fundamentally follows the same principles, which is understand the assets that you have, engage with the community to confirm assumptions on service levels, and then build your operations, maintenance, and renewal programs based on maintaining those service levels. Next slide. Sorry, there we go. So yeah, first a quick summary of what we're talking about here in water and wastewater. And for clarity, as the Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater, I lead the Water and Wastewater Department. And one of my focuses over the past years has been to integrate operations, planning, and engineering across the department within the various services that we manage to maximize our economies of scale and deliver our services as efficiently as possible. So between these water and wastewater services, we have over $1 billion of assets in terms of replacement value, which represents about 62% of the total CVRD assets. So you can probably see why I've been a champion of the program, given that it's largely our assets that are driving the need for the program. So why asset management for this service? This is kind of a high-level summary. So our asset base is aging. So it's been about 45 years since, and in this service, it's particularly acute because that switch to the regional model was done very quickly in the early 80s. And so all of those assets are aging and nearing their expected service life. And the community is also growing rapidly. So we have growth needs in parallel with the need to maintain and renew our infrastructure. We're also adding new infrastructure to our asset base, which is increasing the size of that portfolio. And as I mentioned in my preamble, we're entering that first asset replacement cycle. So having to introduce new processes to help manage this part of the cycle. And then finally, we're seeing significant pressure on the municipal requisition, which is how this service receives funding for operating and capital. And we're seeing pressures on that municipal requisition, as you'll see when we bring the financial plan through early next year. And the concerning piece, which is why we're here today, is that, for the most part, that requisition does not yet include the cost of renewing these assets that are nearing the end of their life. So
Chris, did you want to comment on the Harvard Business Review quote on the earlier page?
Sure. That was just a quote I pulled out to support that that piece about this being the first asset replacement cycle. We've gotten really good at operating and maintaining this infrastructure, but the processes required to operate and maintain infrastructure are different than those required to plan for renewal. And I thought that the quote that I pulled out of the Harvard Business Review kind of reflected that, that management practices that work well in one phase, being the operations and maintenance, are not appropriate for effective delivery of the renewal phase. Thank you, Chair. So what we're proposing, again, at a fairly high level, is to build and maintain an asset inventory. So build on what we've got to date, and then maintain that inventory, through asset renewals, through addition of new infrastructure, and the maintenance program, condition assessment. Maintain that asset inventory so at any given point in time it is up to date, and that forms the backbone for the asset management program. And key to that is that condition assessment piece. Currently, our very high level inventory uses expected service life to plan replacements, does not take into account the actual condition of infrastructure. And it doesn't, and as a result, given the close linkage, it doesn't consider the risk that and the criticality of those assets. We're also looking to articulate and define levels of service to ensure that the assumptions that we make about the service levels to deliver to the community are supported by this commission and potentially the public. We want to flesh out our capital and operating annual work planning. And in combination with that next piece, the longer financial planning horizon, to look 20 years out to allow us to deliver much higher level of rate stability. And you'll see me coming back to that piece because I think that's the biggest kind of symptom here of the lack of planning that we're looking to implement. I just wanted to highlight that this work is being proposed in parallel with work that's already underway. So the water, sorry, this slide is, my apologies, those first two bullets have not been updated from the last one, but the site master planning at the treatment plant, which I'll touch on in a subsequent slide. the City Works work order and data tracking, which we are implementing across the water and wastewater department. And then some work that we're doing with a third-party consultant to assess the way that we are currently structured to deliver our operations, with the outcome of a greater focus on the value chain, which is summarized at the bottom of the slide. And one of the results summarized on the bar chart on the right of this operational review to date has been that the level of administrative work being carried by our senior operators is in a way crippling to their ability to support that value chain. So that bar chart on the right, the dark blue is the proportion of the total available time by our senior operator and lead hand. So these are the lead operations positions on our crew are being dominated by administrative tasks that could be accomplished by a person with a different skill set, freeing up their time to better manage the delivery and more effectively manage the delivery of our operations. So this is the type of work that we have underway right now to help us rise to meet the challenge of navigating this period of renewal. And then finally, work that we're already doing on benchmarking, which I'll touch on a subsequent slide. So getting to the specific case studies specific to this service. So the first one that I wanted to highlight is the escalation in costs associated with the phase 4 upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. So the site master planning process that was initiated in 2023 is similar to a water master planning process, is focused on how do we accommodate growth how does our infrastructure need to grow to accommodate growth. It is not focused on assessing the condition of infrastructure typically. Early planning through the liquid waste management planning process led us to budget of just under $50 million for the next phase of plant expansion. Again, focused on how do we accommodate growth, how do we meet the effluent quality objectives that were coming out of the liquid waste management planning process. However, as we embarked on that process, we became aware that we didn't have a good grasp on the condition of the infrastructure at the existing plant. And so we added scope to that process to assess that infrastructure, to understand, what, if any, upgrades were required to the infrastructure to be delivered at the same time as that next expansion of the plant. As a result, that budget has more than doubled, as you saw in early November when we brought the draft plan through with the preliminary cost estimate. And that increase is largely to fund infrastructure renewal that needs to be accomplished during the upgrade to this facility. And as you can imagine, that unexpected increase in project price is driving a steep unexpected increase in the municipal requisition, which you'll see in February when we bring the financial plan forward. And the reason I consider this a case study is if we'd had proper asset management in place with regular prescribed condition assessment, these renewals would have been identified significantly earlier with the revenue structure for this service sized to help us navigate this without such a pronounced increase in requisition. So instead, we'll be borrowing for almost that entire project value and paying far more in interest. And as a result of that increase in requisition, the Courtney and Comox will have to adjust their financial plans to accommodate that unexpected increase in regional sewer costs, particularly in the latter years of this next 5-year plan. The next one I just wanted to highlight, and the point's been made on the previous slide, but just to be clear, the proposed financial plan in February includes a significant increase in requisition to help fund the phase 4 upgrades. But as I mentioned early on in this presentation, that requisition still doesn't address the renewal of assets outside of that phase 4 scope. The site master planning process, being growth focused, the cost for those latter phases, 5, 6, and 7, do not include an assessment of what infrastructure will need to be replaced at the same time due to age and condition as those future growth related projects. And there's approximately $200 million remaining assets to be replaced over the coming decades. So without, until we advance this asset management planning, we will expect further rate volatility. So I just wanted to introduce, as I did in the report, the concept of annual cost of sustainable ownership. And this is a term that was introduced to us from AECOM in our 2019 asset management plans. And it's a fairly simple metric to estimate the annual average cost of infrastructure renewal. And so it's calculated by taking the total asset replacement values over a certain period of time and divided by the number of years. And that provides that annual metric. So that AXO number helps to inform rates, confirming and truth checking where we are in terms of our reserve contributions or reserves in combination with our borrowing costs. But it will also help in decision making regarding the potential for addition of new infrastructure or processes to the service. So using that AXO concept and keeping in mind the principle inherent to asset management being that the shift from expected service life, so planning based on expected service life, shifting to a criticality condition / risk model will extend the life of non-critical infrastructure. So that's the principle here. And in combination with the AXO, by our estimation, every additional year of service that we can justify through the methodical means at our disposal through the asset management program would translate to approximately $250,000 per year reduction over the lifespan of this asset portfolio, and a 5-year extension of life would be over $1 million in annual savings. And what we're proposing here is that of the 2 additional asset management specialists, 0.7 would be funded from the Comox Valley Sewer Service, and that's as a dedicated capacity to help support the condition assessment, the asset inventory maintenance, and a number of other key asset management approaches. And in combination with that FTE, we're looking at approximately an average of $75,000 per year in consulting fees over the next 4 years to help implement the asset management program. Those costs would decrease significantly beyond that as the program shifts to maintenance. And just a note, a further context to the proposed additional FTE, I thought it was relevant to point out that the significant increase to the requisition seen to date in the service and definitely expected over the coming years are primarily being driven by borrowing costs, not increases in FTE to the service. Looking back over the last 10 years, this bar chart just shows the total FTEs that are attracted by this service annually from 2016 through to 2025. And as you can see, the allocation of human resources to this department have remained effectively unchanged over that 10-year period. Remarkably so, given the significant amount of capital planning and delivery that we've delivered over that same period of time. And I think this also highlights the problem, when we're talking about the level of evolution needed in our processes, given that our capacity is stretched thinner and thinner, leaving little capacity to support that evolution. So I just wanted to provide that additional context. And another lens here relates to service liability. As I've highlighted here, and as I'm sure is you're very well aware, we're going through a period of significant growth. We, at an operational level, are having to integrate and adjust to evolving regulations and deal with that increasingly aging set of assets. We are delivering in delivery of an essential service. We certainly understand that interruptions in the service, or particularly failure of treatment, can impact health, environment, personal, private property, and certainly the reputation of the corporation. And if negligence is demonstrated, there's liability. And as asset management becomes best practice, that bar for what constitutes negligence is also shifting. And one final piece, just want to highlight that at the end of the day, asset management is not only about extending expected service life and reducing service costs. It's also about reliable, measurable, repeatable performance and giving staff, senior staff, and yourselves the information that you need to make informed decisions and hold us accountable for management of your infrastructure. So in addition to the main drivers for asset management that I described to you today, collecting the data that we need to inform that asset management program also provides an opportunity for benchmarking, which is the practice of tracking performance on a range of key performance indicators, some of which are highlighted here on the slide. And that's both to motivate improvement on our end, but also to help facilitate comparison between our performance and that of other jurisdictions of similar size across Canada. On the right, there's it's really hard for you to read, but it's two examples that retract as part of the recent operational optimization work that we've been doing. And this is the ratio of civil field staff per kilometer of water pipe, the top one, and then field staff per population, just showing, using preliminary results, how the CVRD compares. This is a combination of water and wastewater. So it just gives you the type of comparison that we could build on and expand upon it in these other KPIs. So when looked at in terms of staff per kilometer of water pipe, we are above average. When looked at as a ratio of staff per population, we're quite a bit below. So this is just used as an example of the type of comparisons that that we could bring forward to support future decision making. So that's a ton of information, and I know I took a little more time than I was planning to, but I'm happy to support your discussion or answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Chris. You started out with an apology that was totally unnecessary. I don't know if we're going to give you any awards for making asset management more exciting, but we will see what questions arise, and we'll start with Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Chris. And I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this. And I was just going to say, as a sort of, though I'm asking questions about asset management and how we implement it, I'm 100% a believer in it. And just the very first thing I did after I got elected to council years ago was to bring forward an asset management bylaw. We're the only jurisdiction, Courtney, in the province that has one. So I'm like a deep believer, and I just want to make sure when we implement something new that we're doing it as effectively and efficiently as possible. And I was wondering if, when developing this particular model, which I realize is somewhat decentralized, you got totally centralized and you got totally decentralized, and we're sort of on that continuum, whether you were in touch with staff in other regional districts around the province, the other 26 regional districts, to find out how others were sort of fitting asset management into the rather unusual model that regional districts are. It's a distinct way of managing things. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk about what the other models you've observed were and how that informed kind of the choices that were made here.
Sure. Yeah, we certainly have had contact with a number of other jurisdictions across the province. Some of the gold standard for municipal, more on the municipal side than regional district. But there is, as you've noted, a range of approaches between centralized and decentralized, and then also where in what part of the organization asset management is based. So whether that be in the finance department or engineering, there are a range of approaches. And as you've highlighted, what we're proposing here is a bit of a hybrid approach. The embedded, with that combination of centralized, corporate resources, and then the embedded staff. And I think, the proposal is to have that direct reporting relationship within the department, but to have that dash line to the central corporate staff to ensure that we're implementing the approaches uniformly and consistently across departments. But then that hybrid nature of having those embedded staff so that they can become part of that operational group. So I think we feel like we've integrated what we've heard from other jurisdictions and landed at somewhere that will work well for us here at the CBRD.
May I ask a follow-up if it seems that there's no other lights on? I was curious as well, and I didn't know which ones we looked at, so I did a little bit of research. And I guess the two regional districts where I could see a really clear policy in place, like what we're doing here, are both here on the island. One is the CRD, and the other CBRD. And I see in their models a more centralized approach than we're taking it. Their models seem to be more analogous, say, to I was talking last week that in some ways we have two different kinds of assets. We have human beings and we have physical things, and we manage human resources centrally from one place system-wide. And I've been having my hunches that may be the more effective way of delivering it here. And it's interesting to see that those two models seem to be doing that as well. But I know we also, learned from our nearby neighbors, and there wasn't an advisory board minutes on this, but on the water agenda there is, and there's some conversation sort of read there between yourself and staff at Courtney and Comox and how they were doing it. Maybe this is more appropriate to the water agenda, because I guess that's where those, it sounded a bit in those advisory minutes like those were initial discussions on what each of the municipalities' models were. Is that something that was discussed kind of earlier on in the process to try and sort of learn from local examples? Courtney, obviously having taken a bit of a lead on asset management.
Yeah, certainly. We had a fair bit of contact between staff at the CBRD and the city, back in 2019, 2020, as we were taking our first go at the asset management planning, and right around that time, as you noted, the city was developing their own process and making the structural changes there. So yeah, there was a fair bit of contact back then, but not so much over the last several years until more recently. Yeah, and I think just further to your point about the other CVRD and the CRD, I can't speak to their own processes or their organizational structure, but one of the key aspects here that I just wanted to highlight, and I think I touched on it on one of my slides when I spoke about the work that we're doing to optimize our operations and bring it in line with the delivery of the value chain delivery. These asset management specialist positions within the way that we intend to implement them within the water and wastewater group, they are, part of their role will be to support the development of that corporate program, maintain consistency, but they're a large component of their work. And this is why I bring it up, because it is relevant to that integration piece, is in the annual work planning for our operations team, both operations and capital delivery. We see that as the big piece that's missing from our work, as I tried to highlight in our presentation today. And having those positions embedded in those groups having those relationships, we just think will be a much more effective approach. So to be honest, I don't know how CRD, what their model looks like, but I know that on our end, this is not just about developing the frameworks and maintaining the inventory. It's about that work planning, and that that's our biggest argument for embedding the work within the teams rather than here at the head office with a very different relationship. So we think there's a higher level of effectiveness possible through that model than the central one.
Okay, I'm just noting we've got about 20 minutes left, another item and an in-camera agenda. So Director Cole Hamilton, did you have anything else? Fair enough. And I have a question that I'm going to save for when this larger matter comes back to the larger board. But thanks very much, Chris, for your presentation today and for your efforts to make it as relevant as possible. Mr. Warren, go ahead.
Very, very quick comment, and it's just on the sense of that central versus decentral model. And we're making notes on what to bring back in the report in January. And I've heard this a couple of times, the rationale for the program and looking at the combination of central versus decentral. So I think we will be able to report on that and look at other RDs just to sort of talk about what is in the mix. I do want to say on the HR piece, yes, there is an HR department, there is HR centralized in a sense, but when we look at all of the managers in the field and the departments, they have an HR component to them. We've got supervisors in the field all the time. So there's a mix in that model as well. And I think that's what we're trying to find that right balance there. So we'll try to report back on that in January.
Thanks for those comments, and thanks again, Chris. Anyone opposed to receipt? That is carried, and we'll move on to item number 4, which is the Comox Valley Sewer Conveyance Project Construction Progress Dashboard. And I believe, well, I'm going to express surprise that you're here, Charlie. I thought you'd still be out celebrating the opening up of the road the other day. But over to staff.
I won't take any thunder away from Charlie. I think he's got a good presentation here on the dashboard for the conveyance project. Charlie.
Yeah, thank you both. Yeah, we're here to celebrate. Just wanted to, just bring up some photos, talk about some of the achievements and everything that happened last week. We were able to reopen the road last Friday, as everyone is very aware, and it was a huge combined effort as it kind of came to the final pieces, but it all seemed to go off without much of a hitch, and we've received some really positive feedback since we put out the final announcements, which is really lovely to hear. And it's a really good one to stop having to spend so much of our time talking about traffic. So we're really excited about moving forward on the rest of the project, which we still have a long way to go. A couple of photos. We are obviously all complete at Glacier View Roundabout. And we're not sharing. I apologize. I was too excited. All right. Just wait for this to catch up. So yeah, some photos of the signboards on Friday afternoon and the sign above Comox Hill there, just thanking the public for their patience. Some pictures of the finished roundabouts. Unfortunately, I haven't been out there since the cones have all been removed. So, but everything's looking so great out there now. And I think the contractor did a great job of their final cleanup on Friday. And but unfortunately, the project is not quite complete as much as the public think it is. So here's a photo of the Courtney Pump Station site. You can see that they've now completed the final major concrete pour of the wet well, which is the underground concrete structure. But the remainder of the pump station is still on hold pending the ground improvement issue, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. We are still doing the final piping within the wastewater treatment plant, so connecting into the headworks of the facility, and that's ongoing right now, and will be happening through December and January. And there's an update there on the budget. I did want to note that I found an error in how we've been presenting these numbers, just the way with the heading here. This should have just said spent to date, not allocated. The funds are fully allocated on this project. I didn't want everyone to get excited about a $20 million saving as Chris is presenting asset management, and I didn't want anyone to steal the money we need to finish the project. But we are still on budget, and we're confident in that statement that we keep putting out to the public. But we still have a long way to go on the project. And I wanted to just make sure that everyone was aware of the upcoming work, what we're going to be doing in 2026 now that we're kind of be outside the public eye a lot more. We have that ground improvement issue that we still need to resolve. The contractor is getting close on really defining what they need to do there, and that's going to be to come back and do some more ground densification, which is bringing machinery back in to inject either stone or grout into the ground to re-solidify the ground around where they did a lot of the groundwater pumping, where they've kind of reduced the density of the ground. But that's all outside of that secant pile, that kind of concrete ring that you're able to see from the road. But it's holding up their ability to proceed with the construction of the building. We'll also see a big increase in activity down at the Comox pump station on Jane Place. They're going to be instigating a bypass of that pump station in January to allow us to get into the underground concrete structures and fully rehabilitate them. And so we've delivered a notice to the neighborhood there to let them know that work will ramp up, but that will all be complete within the first 3 months of 2026, as it will be in Comox First Nation, the little pump station on the side of the road there. And you will still see crews along the side of the road in little pockets as they work on the air valves and air management points along the route. But none of this will have any kind of major traffic impacts. And then in Q2 of next year, the Cordy pump station construction will still be going, and they'll be moving into commissioning, and they'll be fully commissioning the Comox and Comox First Nation pump stations with the completion of the commissioning in Q3 of next year. So that's all I have for today. But yeah, I really appreciate the kudos. We've received a lot of really positive feedback from kind of all parties involved. So we really appreciate everyone's support as we work through this complicated year. And I think that, that we're really, really proud of getting it done.
Thanks, Charlie. It's wonderful to see the smile on your face. And over to Director Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest maybe just a round of applause. Thank you, Charlie. This has been a huge job, and I know the community probably won't recognize the fact that it was done under budget and on time, but those are huge achievements, and just thank you for delivering like you always do.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Director Morin.
Yeah, the accolades to continue. I thank you for all your work and for delivering this great project update. I'd also like to do a shout out to the comm staff. I think this was a huge undertaking for them, and I think they did just an amazing job navigating a lot of attention to this project and often some negativity, etc. And I think they just did it in a wonderful way. So thanks.
Thanks for those comments. Director Kerr.
More accolades coming. Thanks, Charlie. Great early Christmas present. And I was going to also echo Director Morin's comments about the comm staff, especially about the roundabouts and how to use them and how not to use them. That's been very helpful. And the only issue is that Director Grant Swift and I will need to readjust our schedules, as we were all here very early for the meeting. So we'll have to recalibrate our driving times. Thank you.
All right. So, well, all sorts of recalibration going on. I was able to drive along Comox Road to soccer for the first time on Saturday morning, and I thought the banner at the top of the hill was a really nice touch. Well done with that. And I'll echo the comments that have been made. We'll look forward to further good news as the rest of the project completes, but certainly hope that you and all of your staff are resting easily and feeling good about a job well done.
Thank you.
All right, and this is for receipt. So all those in favor? That's carried. And we will now move on to our in-camera recommendation under section 90 of the community charter. A motion for that, please. Moved by Grant, by Swift. All those in favor? Thank you.